Recording in progress.
That makes much more sense.
I'm going whale
Did you see
watching.
my little
Yeah.
theme swing on my? Yeah.
They're on a sightseeing tour. Oh, yeah.
Cool.
Oh, my God.
Well, it's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Unless you butchered it since.
Hey.
Yesterday.
Paper I throw away.
You gotta keep the term straight.
I hope you don't throw it away.
I cleaned out my car the other day. It was all this stuff.
Thank you.
I'm gonna
Okay, I just figured it
full
hopefully
of
was a
it.
ball.
Oh, yeah, I don't have to.
That's
Welcome to the study session, July 25th. It's called order. Donna, will you do a roll call, please?
I will. Councilmember Bode,
Here.
Councilmember Sherman. Here. Councilmember Gutierrez.
Here.
Marinesco,
Here.
Deputy Mayor Schmidt.
Here.
Councilmember McDowell. And Councilmember Peterson.
Here.
Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
Today we have Public Works Director Jay Harris, like an update about street standards.
Good evening, Council, Jay Harris and Brent Armstrong. I'm a Public Works Director. And Brent is helping me like no tomorrow without a city engineer. Brent is a wastewater and storm superintendent, but he's come over from that group. Been at Civic Center for about six months now. Helping out, making a big difference. I'd like to also call out Aaron Nix. He's our new capital projects manager. This is Aaron's second day at the city, and he just got done a resolution and a briefing for you folks, actually two different ones. I haven't checked them yet, okay? But we have high hopes for Aaron. He attended meeting with our funding partners at Washoe today and got a lot of nauseum and some pain from those people at Prochdale and funding and DBE and all sorts of things. And Aaron is still here tonight. So it's going good. We're doing good here. So you'll see more of Aaron around. He's helping. We have a backlog of projects and you're going to see some of them after the streets presentation. So Brent Armstrong here is going to give the presentation. This is the third presentation about what do we do for infill development lots. So this is a follow-up to other prior meetings. Brent, you're up.
So yes, we'll start with the current issue. We've gone over this a few times, but trying to eliminate some of our infill issues that we have and get some clarity for developers and staff on what we're gonna do in some of these parcels. Pictured here, you got a sidewalk to nowhere. If that developed partially, but the rest of the street is developed out, so it's not gonna get extended any further, at least by anyone developing. If we decide to put it on the critical pedestrian route at some point, then we would probably come in and extend those facilities. We're trying to not only make it as simple as we can for the developers cost wise, but also get a quality product at the end that we can maintain easier. And then gravel and through roadways, we'll touch on what we're suggesting we put in there and take your feedback and implement it. So the critical pedestrian routes are our interconnected routes to get us through the city, through the neighborhoods, downtown and businesses, connect to parks, trails, basically to get around the city without having to be in the roadway as much as possible. And then we have developed parcels, which are already have an existing home. They already have water, sewer services. And then development. These are some of the definitions that we're development and infill and undeveloped parcels that we're going to be adding to our standards. Man-made changes to improved or unimproved properties, buildings, homes, reconstruction additions, etc. We just want to kind of make it easy for a developer to come in and see where the actual land the standards are going to hit. Infill development is the big one that we've been going through, and the current round of definitions that we have is infill development is an undeveloped parcel with frontage or frontages that have a distance of undeveloped frontage of 150 feet or less in length. So if you take a 350-foot lots in a row, that won't, if they're over 150 feet, that's not going to trigger the infill stuff. And that's kind of where kind of said we were talking about the 3 lots, maybe 4 lots, whatever. We figured a footage might be a better kind of range to say, okay, you're less than 150 feet, you don't have to do the improvements. You get over 150 feet, then we're going to have that much sidewalk done on a block that we can continue on to when we fund the sidewalk.
But only in front of their parcel. So if there's 3 parcels owned by 3 different people, that person just has to do the one.
Yes, it would be just their frontage.
Yeah, okay.
And there's a little sidewalk matrix on the next page or so that will show you that.
So
We actually did the text box, the yes and no flow chart in the following pages. So.
like the idea of a length being associated with that. I don't know. And I guess talk to me about it, but when you put 150 feet, if it's 149 or 151, that means something, right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, are we gonna argue with people over a foot? They're gonna argue with us and take us to court and they're gonna.
Probably
it's
not,
149
but the
feet,
problem we
so-
had when you search sand lots, we have some lots that are 30
I know.
feet, some lots are 70 feet. And it was just too nebulous on what length are we really looking for? And so we sort of got set on a lot of lots are 50 feet that typically give you 3 lots,
Yeah.
2 lots, 3 lots, 4 lots, somewhere in that range. And then, you know, if you were under that, you wouldn't have to do full street improvements. If you were over that, you would have at least 151 feet of street, right?
So,
So-
I get you.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to it. I just was
And
preparing for the argument. It's
part of the reason too is most of our blocks are around 300 feet.
Yeah.
We're
Half a block.
Half a block.
And it's clear, it's a lot better than if you're 3 lots in, like you're saying, I mean, I like the length a lot more. And it's just kind of non-negotiable. I mean, if you're over, you're over, if you're under, you're under, it stinks, It's the same with connecting to a sewer. I mean, if you're within that zone, you're in the zone, if you're over it, you're over it, like. And it's a set number.
And then definition of undeveloped parcel that has no existing or former building or structure. Does not have existing sewer or water, hasn't added to the site.
Right, and Brent brought up something earlier that we want to talk to you about. There's been parcels where the house was demolished 15, 20 years ago. Probably sewer and water to the site, and there was a house there at one time, trying to figure out when it was put in, when it was taken down, what services there were. But it wouldn't fall under the definition of this redeveloped site, okay? Oh, I'm sorry, undeveloped site, but it would fall under redeveloped site, which we'll get to in a little bit. So I had a good answer to Brent's question. I just want to see what you guys think about the answer, okay? So remember that when we get to redeveloped site.
And then unimproved street, we talked about this a little bit last time. On. Kind of defining that, so right away. That does not have any street improvements or existing. Street improvements are less than 20 feet in width. We're kind of running that with fire code, so if there's like a little 10-foot. Path that people are using to cut through, you take like 8th and Wyandotte or 9th and Wyandotte up there, you know, there's a little trail that connects them in, stuff like that. It's really an unimproved street, even though people can kind of get through there. The fire department can't use it.
Well, like
So-
Puget, that's not very wide.
Yeah,
Maybe
but
20 feet, but it's, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not-
not a whole lot.
probably, it's not much more than it, right?
Yeah.
So we set the minimum street standard to be called an improved street. Meets fire code, that's 20 feet and it has to handle the 75,000 pound loaded fire truck with all the guys and equipment on it. If it's not that, then it's an unimproved street, which is fine, but we need to designate between the two. Because the goal is to get all streets to improved standard, or at least support the fire truck and the width. Then we gotta get them paved next and do other things. But the goal is to make sure that the service providers can get to all residents. So that's why that was set. So some of these little skinny roads and stuff, we're saying they're unimproved streets, even though they have some gravel and stuff on them, they still don't meet fire department standards.
So we would work on that.
We're gonna work on that, yep.
And if in anything, we can say to people. We've got to get these done for the fire trucks and the ambulances and.
That's correct. They need to meet that minimum standard.
And. This is the meat of the section, and I'm not gonna. Just round through it, I'll just hit on some highlights of it, But these are kind of what. We've gathered in these discussions on what the standards are going to go to. So, except for infill developments, all new development projects, redevelopment sites. We are gonna have them. Build out. To street frontage, identified in section 2.1. Or 2.100. And. Street and or alley and frontage improvements, corner lots, they're responsible for their frontage all the way around. On the corner and, to the intersection. So they're gonna need to make that, so fire can turn around, it's a dead end. Local streets are gonna be improved so they can allow two-way traffic, parking along the project frontage. curbs, landscaping, trees. Utility easements if needed and right of way dedication if. Needed. Frontage improvements on collectors and arterials. We're gonna have them. And turn lanes as needed, striping, medians, bike lanes, and also additional right of ways.
Brent, touch on the dedication real quick. If that's if the platted street, is 20 feet wide and we require 32 feet wide total right of way, then somebody developing on the one side would dedicate half of what's needed. So there's 12 feet, they dedicate 6 feet on that side, correct?
Yeah. And most of that dedication is due to get. The facilities that we need in there and make them be in the right of way, not. In an easement.
So these are for the larger sites. You develop a 20-foot wide roadway that's two-way traffic and parking along your frontage, not for the small under, 150 feet and under. These are for the bigger sites, which is a lot of sites, right? There's a lot of sites that will need to do this. These are, the 400 feet of frontage, the whole blocks are undeveloped. Those type of things are what we're talking about here, that at a minimum. People need to pass on the roadway. It needs to be built to fire department structural section. And you need to put a curb and a sidewalk and your parking area in. So that's what that's saying.
I have a question up top on except infill development sites, all new developed projects, and when we're talking short plats, when are you looking to have these done though, as it's built out? So like, does infrastructure have to be brought into those short plats? Can we short plat it and then as say a short plat of a lot and I sell off because of 2 of the lots? Will I be able to finish that short plat before I have to do any improvements?
The
Does
plat
that make sense?
The plat could be recorded, but
No
before
building.
you get a building.
Okay.
permit,
We won't issue a
You
building.
you can
permit is the way it
sell
reads.
a lot and if you sold it to someone else before they got a building permit, they would need to install.
Okay.
the
So,
frontage.
okay, perfect. What about any infrastructure type things, bringing water, sewer in? Does that done at the time of permitting as well?
Water and sewer. We can.
Yeah,
accept them.
the streets will have to go, all public improvements will need to be installed before we'll issue a building permit.
But
You get into a lot of problems if you issue building permits while people are still building streets and not bringing the sewer all the way in and it's not deep enough and it just goes on and on and on, so.
But you can get the short plat done.
Yep.
And then it's
You get
all,
it
it's
for-
all triggered by building.
And then
permits.
you
Thank
bonded for the improvements too, we have plans and you bonded for the improvements.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Question on that paragraph, just I'm trying to read it as a non-developer, right? So. As I understand this, infill development is also potentially a redevelopment site, but not all redevelopment sites are infill development, correct? Because this is starting off with an except, right? So except for infill. But basically, if you're,
Oh, yeah,
if
one.
yeah, section,
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay.
So if somebody purchases a lot that we deem an infill lot and they want to build on it again, that's a redevelopment site.
If it's had a development, if it's had a house. on it before.
Yeah.
And that's where.
So that would negate then the accept part, right?
Yeah,
That would be
For
required.
this language.
So we would have a sidewalk to nowhere. Right there, there'd be houses on the entire street except for that one lot for the house burnt down 25 years ago.
Wait till you get to
That's
the
the one
redevelopment.
That's what
That's the one I'm talking about. Hopefully I figured that out. When Brent asked the question, I was going, oh, no.
Well, you mentioned that redevelopment.
Yeah, that
on
I
the
put
lot
that
of
earlier.
Okay.
So what Joe asked is that infill is where there was a house that burnt down, there's sewer line, water line, that's an infill, no.
That's redevelopment.
Redevelopment.
It doesn't meet the definition of infill site. And when we get to the redevelopment site in the next page or so, I'll show you how that works. And we can still change all this, right?
So that's. I don't want to say that's what we've been led to think, because that's not true either. We've been believing that infill are those homes that previously existed on a lot, right? And you can rebuild a house there. And we talked about GFCs, that's another one. We talked about GFCs is like, oh, if there was a house there, I don't know what the stipulation was, 5 years, 10 years, something like that, then there's no GFCs because there previously was. But if there hasn't been any development right? It's kind of like, they gotta start over and it's redevelopment.
The water service was
Yeah.
existing, I think that's the,
So what?
that's the kicker, right?
That's sitting.
GFCs and.
Yeah.
And vacant parcel.
And I think that there's an actual. Yeah, it's 04 was the cutoff because we didn't have it before then.
Do you pay a GFC if your house was prior to 04 because there was no impact fees?
That's
sit-
another,
yeah.
that's a.
I'm totally under the water on this because I understood that infill was where there used to be a house and no water and sewer would do it. and
Infill's
it's
just a
still there.
lot that is. essentially-
Never been built on.
Never been
But it's
built.
platted, right? It's a paper lot.
There's a parcel.
There are parcel lines that identify that lot on a map somewhere, but there's no house or development on it. Rather than a large 40-acre parcel or 100-acre parcel that
And it's
lot lines on it.
I mean,
when we get to redevelopment, if that's not what you want for the standard that we. The conditions that we put on redevelopment for residential. We thought maybe we could put a year on that, something that's easier that we don't have to go look back to. 1930.
well, we
Yeah.
know if there's water, there,
Right.
there's gonna be a meter out front, right?
See, though, they get lost. We found one on a lot over here that no one knew there was water there.
Very difficult.
Asset
Well,
management.
We're working on that. We got a new GIS guy doing that
Yeah.
right now. But,
You have to go
But
there.
but it's still, I mean, all these years, the goal with the infill lots is to get somebody to build a damn house on it. And if it were, we want to make it as easy as possible.
And the redevelopment
Do that.
site is easy. You want to just go to that section? real
Let's do
quick?
it.
Yeah,
Let's fill this up.
We
Yeah,
actually found
please.
2 sewer lines that were tapped as well, that no one.
They go to page 7.
I'll
at the
just- you gotta
bottom.
get all that worked out. Where are we?
Some of
Okay.
Some of it's just not bad.
So the first part of redevelopment site is any site that's outside the neighborhood residential zoning district where the value of the proposed improvements of to the building or structure exceeds 50% of the value of the existing structure by an architect. That's in a commercial zone, okay? So if you go over 50%, like the courthouse over there, the old Safeway building, right? They went way over 50% of the existing building value. Full frontage improvements apply, sidewalks, curbs, ramps, streets, all of that, okay? So that's in the commercial districts, okay? Then you jump down to the neighborhood residential zoning district down the bottom. Okay, and the way that reads is you extend the house burned down, it hasn't been there in a zillion years. But it's still a redevelopment site, it's residential, it's in the NR zone, and you just have to extend the existing street improvements. For all streets and alleys, and then we're getting you for the 8-foot parking. So if it's a gravel road there, you extend the existing gravel road, whatever's abutting you is what you put in, but. We're having you pave a parking strip, so all the standards have you pave the parking in front of your house for the most part, is the way it currently lands. So that's how we dealt with the redevelopment site. So if you look at the pictures down at the bottom, those are both residential homes. And if that house wasn't there and they want to put a new house in a replacement structure, it happens a lot down the road. These are extremely old houses. 20 years from now, as the city climbs and keeps going, there's gonna be replacement structures on these, okay? Time heals some of this, right? A place like Lake Oswego, all the houses were replaced. We're not Lake Oswego, Oregon, but someday we might be with, good Bayfront and all that. Anyways, but this person in the picture on the bottom left there they'd be required to extend any improvements to their site. Well, it already has a road and a sidewalk all the way around, right? But it would be required to pave its parking strip in this instance. When you build your new house, you pave the parking in front of your house, and then you're done there. On the one on the right there, same thing, that little house goes away someday, someone puts a new house, it's a redevelopment site, you're paving the parking strip there.
Do we,
So,
are we good with that sidewalk though? Would we be requiring them to upgrade that sidewalk as well?
So the sidewalk standard in the code right now requires the owner to maintain it and keep it in repair. So if it fell into disrepair, our current code already has, code enforcement would, talk to them and get them to comply with, if it's all craft and offset and topsy-turvy.
But we
already have.
we'd allow like that, because just from looking at it in this picture, that looks like it's good, but that doesn't meet today's standards. So would we allow them to keep that though? Because it is there, or are we gonna make them bring that to today's standard?
The way it's written right now, that sidewalk would be left,
Okay,
So.
but it'd be repaired to make sure there's no tripping happen.
understood, sorry.
Right.
So that's a corner lot as well. And according to the plan here, they would have to pay, they would have to do all. Response, so would that be ADA? This is a corner lot. Would they have to
No,
put
all
it-
they're doing is paving their frontage.
Paving, that's it.
That's it, and that stays the way it is. No
So-
sidewalk improvements, no ADA improvements.
So then like an example 4, that's a corner lot. Right?
Mhm.
So if they do. You know,
Now, this falls under the
That's
commercial standard. You're not residential anymore. That isn't in our zone. That's in general commercial. And so if that improvement exceeded 50% of the building value of the structure, you'd be required to put in street improvements there. This particular instance or not, they're just doing
To
small
meet standard.
to meet side,
So it'd be
sidewalk.
essentially be a redevelopment of sidewalk and street to meet existing standard.
Yeah. So
But
and as
today, we couldn't require, they're just doing some tenant improvements in there, not a whole lot. It doesn't exceed the valuation of the building. This is Mason County, and so it's going to stay like that until someone redevelops that site.
And sorry, how do we define a corner lot?
It fronts two streets. We don't actually have a definition of corner lots in the code.
We just cover it by saying your entire frontage. Your front street
Well-
here and the.
We need to be clear on our, because we have a definition of frontage, and the frontage is the narrowest part of your lot. That's the frontage in our land use code. So we need
Side
to,
and
we need to reconcile that,
Yeah.
make sure,
Okay.
make sure it's a frontage on a right of way. If it's within our street standards, right, not just the frontage of the
I'll
house.
have to go look at all the
Yeah,
definitions.
so,
and pull some of that.
Yeah, if you look, so
Yeah,
so like my neighborhood doesn't, we don't have corner lots.
Right.
I live on, I have a 3-sided lot. I do not have a front yard. So even though I do, I don't have frontage, do I? It's a pot,
Yeah.
3 sides.
Yeah.
And who picks what's my front yard, my backyard, and my side yard?
the narrowest, per the zoning code for land use, the narrowest part of the lot is your front. Right, that fronts the street.
Okay,
So
so that's my side facing my neighbor's house.
is it addressed there as the main entrance there? Interesting. So it's built different than our code. But you would have three.
I have no sidewalks out in front of my.
But you would have 3 frontages under the existing example. You can front 3.
Yeah.
3 streets in that, under that example.
street.
1 street.
One street. There's no other streets in my neighborhood. I don't have, I live in a circle, in a loop.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
and
yeah,
at the
yeah.
bottom end of it. I
Yeah,
have
exactly right.
sides.
Okay.
This is my argument when I put my fence in. Why can't I have a 6-foot fence all around my property? You can't have a 6-foot fence because that's your. What yard is it?
Side yard or front yard? Side yard up to the,
Up to
but if you're on
That's it.
if you're on a corner lot, it has to be set back. We fixed that now.
42 inches.
Oh, 42 inches, okay.
That has been addressed now and up there. Sorry.
It's like, that's taking it off.
What personal problems are coming at you now?
But yes, that is. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's something we run into with.
But we shouldn't
fence permit as well.
be building neighborhoods like that anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we want a grid system, right?
Yep.
We want intersections.
Yes, so
that are-
there is street, they have block link standards between local street to local street that is 150 feet now from street to street. So you would have 2 lots in your instance, because the streets would be 150 feet apart. So you wouldn't put, I don't think you'd put a lot, we might increase that spacing to 200. I'll go look at
Yeah.
that to prevent your situation from happening. Do you know how deep your lot is?
No,
Okay, I'll go look.
yeah, it's an interesting one, you know,
Yeah.
because.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just, again, since we're going through and trying to make things clear, it's like.
The devil's in the details here, right? And we
Yeah.
don't have a definition, it's gonna be ambiguous, so we need to make sure we have our definitions to clearly
That's it,
guide us.
and that's the tough part is because if it was something that was previously permitted and approved. than, you
Correct.
know, in modern times.
Yeah.
It was built in the nineties, late
And
nineties.
I think Jay's gonna talk about, there's gonna be instances we can't cover, right? We have to have allowances to address these in a reasonable way with a variance or a design modification that can be made administratively, right? We need to be able to manage these, and whether it's a cost threshold or some other threshold that allows us to do that administratively. Ultimately, that has to be done to keep things moving, not grind us to a standstill.
And how do we come to terms with the cost of the project with the developer?
50% under redevelopment.
Yeah, how do we?
Yeah, so the licensed architect needs to prepare that, it's in the definition, the licensed architect needs to prepare that estimate.
Thanks.
But, and then that's also though, one thing where in this situation. We talked about. What there's county or anyone else that they bought that building. They just moved in, they don't trigger.
Right, right, yeah.
But it's 50%, yeah, but we can put it in. Whatever we want,
It's consistent with the building code.
it is consistent.
Building code requires full current code if you exceed 50% of the valuation of the structure, not the property, the structure itself.
We just got a lot of stuff that looks like this, where it's half-assed, incomplete, you know, I'm not gonna lie, it's just. Sucks. There's not a mechanism to deal with it. Right,
And so. With that, so that's the redevelopment. Standard. Are you wanting to keep that way? Or? Because some of these lots. That have had a house and it's either burned down or been torn down. It's gonna land in the redevelopment. Are you good with having just been paved or parking in front?
Well, I mean. If you have a neighborhood with 20 houses in there and this is gonna be the only house with a sidewalk, I just.
Not a sidewalk, just that.
That's not what it's requiring. Yeah, the redevelopment is pave your part, unless there's a sidewalk adjacent to it, then you would extend it. Otherwise, if there's no frontage improvements at all, it could be a gravel road. All you're doing is paving your 8-foot parking stall or slip or lane in front of it. That's the
Where that-
redevelopment.
Just so you know where that came from, is you drive the streets with a lot of parking. I'd say a third of them are paved, or maybe half are paved, half of them are gravel. It's just sort of interspersed all over the place. And anyways, gravel, we don't maintain these, and there's some of the gravel areas that. When we go overlay the road, we'll sometimes go sprinkle in, but they're lacking maintenance. And so we felt that paving it at least gives you a better place to unload your groceries and your guests to park and that sort of thing. And it's a little bit better maintained.
yeah, for redevelopment, I'm fine with that. Right, as you guys explained. If there's gonna be a reconstruction for your definition, redevelopment for your definition.
You're basically matching up, right, with what's beside you, right?
Right.
So you're matching that up if it's there.
So I think I brought this up last time, big concern, somebody's house burns down completely to the ground. Insurance is paying for that structure to be rebuilt. Who's paying for the sidewalk if insurance doesn't pay it? And they don't have the money, they're 85-year-old couple that are getting their house rebuilt, who's paying for that improvements?
So that if there was a sidewalk adjacent, because the redevelopment clause would kick in, that they would have to extend that sidewalk.
So they don't have the money for it. Insurance gave them enough to build the house. That's it.
And they don't get their.
I don't believe insurance is gonna pay for a sidewalk.
Oh.
So,
But even if there isn't a sidewalk, they're still doing the paving.
Even parking strip.
And I'm thinking of all of those, I get it.
And that's not, that they're paving whether there's pavement beside them or not. So that's the biggest change in this that I'm hearing. It's a tough one because I can't switch between my hats as easy as I'd like to, because as a builder, I absolutely don't want to do it. Like, it seems ridiculous to me because if I just buy the info lot next door, I don't have to do it. But then I am bringing utilities. But I also probably might have to upgrade my utilities because I don't have the new meter.
No, the infill lot you're paving, everyone's paving their frontage.
Oh, everyone is
Every
now?
single
The
undeveloped
infills are paving. too?
infills are paving it to per
So then the only difference,
recommendation from staff, which we can change, right? Everybody, if you go to the
Okay.
matrix, let's bring
Yeah, I
get
like
through
the
page 4,
Sorry.
okay? And then we'll go to the matrix and we'll talk a little more about
It's all Mark's fault. He wants our input.
that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so
We've got all night.
we got the question.
We'll let you know.
Jim, do you do DoorDash for your?
yeah,
restaurant?
yes, I-
There is a box of chips in the back.
I'm not gonna name
Jay was
water.
complaining that we don't feed them, yeah.
Okay, so we were on, good with A, with the redevelopment. Figured that one out, okay, B. B, the only question we had was that corner lot in front, we'll figure that out. That frontage definition. So C, intern street. And intern off-site streets used to access and development. Except for infill development. Shall meet at least fire code, so if you have. Street to get to your property, you need to bring that up so the fire department can get there.
Well,
So this is that subdivision that's over there and they have a road that gets out to the paved road, right? We gotta get the fire department into, and this is more than 150 feet, right? Of frontage, we need to get the fire department to your site. I need that, the road needs to get improved so we can get them in and out of there.
only if they're redeveloping and building or something, not just somebody that's living there.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And I think, so Capitol Hill, although it's the county, there's that
Correct.
little duplex neighborhood.
Yeah.
Got a narrow street, I get what you're saying, and then you go in there, and there's like 10 duplexes.
Yeah.
Back in there.
Yeah.
And that's in the UGA and something we'd likely inherit.
Correct. And then there's some development
Yeah,
adjacent to
so
that.
those houses up in here, or somebody wants to build on those parcels, then they're gonna have to.
Correct.
How does the fire?
Off of Wyandotte, there's, I think 10 goes through, and it's just a little roadway.
Yeah,
that
okay.
people go. So that would have to be brought to fire code to access, or if we didn't put it, if you were a small development, if you were a big development, you'd offset the gate, you put the full road.
Is there an in out on that where those duplexes?
One
just-
in and one out. Same entrance, yeah, just like my
They
neighborhood.
have to back, the fire trucks to back out.
Potentially.
They-
Make
Do
sure
like
there's
a,
a-
do like
the
a
hammerhead
55
there.
point turn back in there.
We'd
Unfortunately,
have to back up.
but
It's
that's
just like literally a straight in.
substandard design standards bring us,
I wonder,
especially in the UGA, bring us this,
Yep.
these problems.
Yeah,
that we have
a
to
lack of a
address.
common development code in the
Yeah.
UGA's.
But so an A above though, that it does say city and UGA.
Yeah.
So,
That's why I brought that up.
Then I just need to talk to Mason County to make sure, because our street standards aren't adopted by Mason County. But I'm saying they apply as Mason County approves,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
I got a call them, right, which is fine. They don't have problems with higher level standards in the UGA. The goal is down the road is their street standards are in the UGA are our standards, right, down the road. So we all have the same
That's being
standards.
addressed, that's being addressed with our comp plan update and the common process for the countywide planning policies in the Shelton UGA being addressed between the county and the city too. So those mirror each other and we have some commonality in our development standards that isn't there now. And I think we have a good partnership building with the county to be able to establish those, so everybody's clear.
I'm sure you don't know the answer to this one, Mark, but how in the heck did the county get that? When those duplexes were built up there? How did that, with one road in and you had to back out?
At that time, it was a long time ago, at that time, back in the second, that fire code.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, there's.
Sorry,
Certainly,
that, whatever. we do.
So in this interim streets and offsite streets, is for all development, it's except for the so it's full on development. Designed to T22 gravel shoulders, storm drainage improvements, street lighting. No parking signs until it gets built out with parking on it. Additional improvements will be required for collectors and arterials such as turn lanes, wide shoulders, sidewalks. And then also, we have to caveat in there, and it can be determined by the city engineer on a case by case basis. There's, and then to cover some of those areas that are hard to catch in all in one.
This is a larger development we're talking about. This is like Coffee Creek. What do they do to Deacon Road, right? There are gonna be a lot of cars using Deacon Road, right? This gives us a way to talk to the developers and say there's offsite mitigation. You need to do some things to these substandard roads offsite, because you're adding a lot of traffic to a collector roadway. Deacon's a future collector roadway. So, this gives some flexibility for our staff to say, hey, you're adding 1,000 trips per day here or whatever it is. And on a future collector roadway. So we thought this was a really good change. The city engineer obviously navigates it. They submit traffic reports and volumes and, Coffee Creek eventually is going to go down to Deegan, use railroad. And so we thought this was important, and this gives us the ability to, for a larger development, obviously on a collector roadway, to have them do some additional things.
But to clarify, in this instance, Deegan Road is in the UGA outside the city limits at this point, right? So we don't have a trigger and we're relying upon Mason County or even another jurisdiction, maybe the state of Washington in some instances, to determine what the proper development of that road section will be, right? And they might not have the best interests in mind long-term that the city might have as we take ownership of these facilities in the UGA. So we need to be upfront, we need to plan, we need to be strategic in the development standards that we adopt for some of these road sections, even outside the city's jurisdiction right now.
Deacon Road can't handle a high traffic volume right now. It
Deacon
is
Road's
pretty shot.
Isn't it like got a hill on one side or a slump on one side and a hill on the other?
That's west,
Oh, okay, we make the left.
east, against this side of it.
Yep.
Okay.
On the east side of 101, yeah. It's a dead end.
It goes to Wallen. That goes to Wallen.
Nope, the dead ends.
Someday, well, the comprehensive transportation plan shows it going all the way through.
D, it's just saying all improvements need to be designed by a licensed engineer for the state of Washington. E, in construction right of way improvements not associated with new developments, such as reconstruction of a roadway, upgrading sidewalks, stormwater improvements. It's not necessary the roadway be improved to include all elements that go full frontage to our standards. They shall meet the minimum base standards, is that?
Yeah, so
It's,
ADA and fire code standards. So what that is we're out and we're overlaying a road at Park Street, for example. And that there is no curb along a lot of Park Street. There's no sidewalk. That paving job doesn't trigger curbs and sidewalks and all that. But it does trigger fire code. If we're repaving a road, we need to, at a minimum, need to make sure the road is up to fire department standards. And then also, we're required, if we're overlaying a road, that we have to meet ADA standards. So if there is any ADA ramps, and we'll be doing that like on Olympic Highway.